our Student Advisory Council Career Development Subcommittee, and they're under the able direction of Jenna Heath, our Director of Student and Community Engagement, and I always have to give her a hand. But the Student Advisory Council, in case you don't know, they're a group of students that Jenna has brought together to represent student interests and concerns to the dean and the dean's office. And one of the things that they have said that they want more of is career and professional development. And I think this is great because it also lines up with something that the dean and I say at every opportunity, which is liberal arts degrees are great career preparation. They teach you all the skills that employers want. You get research skills, communication, writing, critical thinking, analysis. These are skills that employers really, really want. The hard part for you guys at this stage in the game is to figure out how to translate what you learned in your college classes to your resumes to get employers excited about what you have to offer. So this session today is all about that, all about how to show yourself off to your best advantage. So I think, are we ready? Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Jenna to introduce our guest speaker. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Well, hi, everybody. Welcome. So many friendly faces here, which is awesome. So for those of you that don't know, my name's Jenna. I'm the Director of Student and Community Engagement for the College of Liberal Arts, and I have the honor and privilege of presenting today with one of my best friends. This is the incredible Kass. So they are just truly one of the best humans ever. I'm really excited for you all to learn from them. So we're going to do a little bit of back and forth today. So hopefully you don't get bored with just one of our voices. You get to hear both of us. But we're going to teach you a little bit about resumes today, a little bit about LinkedIn, really important critical things for you to think about as you start preparing for your life after graduation, which might feel like a really long time away right now, or you might be like, I'm stumbling into graduation in like 16 weeks and I'm freaking out. So both sides are awesome. So hopefully today will be helpful for everyone. But I'm going to let Kass start by introducing herself.
Well, hello, everyone. So I'm Kass. Nice to meet all of you in this space. I've actually been working remotely for like the past year and a half. So if I'm socially awkward, just let me know. I used to work at UNLV. I used to work in the career services office as a career coach. Then, of course, we transitioned to remote work, and I wanted to stay working remotely. So now I work at a tech startup called PathRise. What we essentially do is I'm a career mentor, so I'm doing the same thing I did before. And I help people bridge into FAANG companies. So that's Facebook, Amazon, Google, those larger organizations, Netflix. I specifically work with people who want to go into the marketing track, and I also work with data scientists. So that's kind of like what I do now. I just transitioned from UNLV into the real world, and it's been super, super awesome. So I'm going to share my insights about resumes and LinkedIn today alongside Jenna. And yeah, super excited to be here. I'm also a UNLV graduate. I got my bachelor's degree in psychology here, and I got my master's degree in higher education. So it's good to be back with you all today.
Great. I know Dean Tillery mentioned this, but we have an epic team helping us out today. So if you see a lot of like heads bobbing around, they're all running our Zoom event so people can join virtually who are not comfortable coming back to campus yet. We want to meet people where they're at. So we're excited that we have the opportunity to do both. So, all right, we're going to get started. So I guess I will start. Okay, so we have a really awesome PowerPoint that you all don't get to see. So apologies about that. Technology is not always perfect. So that's all right. I'm going to do everything from memory and it's going to be amazing. So there are essentially 4 main types of resumes. Do you all know that there are multiple types of resumes? I didn't think so. I didn't know that up until like 10 years ago. And then all of a sudden, like people blew my mind with career development, realizing that there's a lot of different ways to like get into your industry. There's a lot of different types of jobs. Do you all know that you can do different things than other being like a business person, a lawyer, a doctor? Please say yes. Okay. This is going to be interactive for those of you in person and online. Hopefully you all can like engage with us in the chat box. But yes, there's so many different ways to get to the goals that you all are trying to achieve. Some of you are going to go to graduate school, some of you are not, some of you are going to go directly into the workforce and go to grad school later. Some of you are, after 4 years, you're like, I'm done with school, never again. I understand. That was me for about 1.5 years, and then I went back to graduate school anyway. So you never know where your life is going to take you. But so the 4 main types of resumes that we're going to start with today are functional, chronological, combination, and then a CV. So how many of you have heard of a CV? Okay, so all of you little nerdy friends in the room, that was me as well. You all know what a CV is because it's basically an academic resume. So if you're thinking about going to graduate school, if you're engaged in doing research, a CV is going to be very helpful for you. So I'm going to explain all these different types of resumes, but for the most part, a CV is those things, but a lot longer, a lot longer. So a chronological resume is what most of you are probably used to seeing. So this is where you most likely have the education at the top, and then you have like a header that says some of the jobs you've done, and then maybe some leadership positions or scholarships. Can everyone envision what this might look like? You're gonna have to use your imagination a little bit. Is everyone thinking of the SpongeBob thing right now? Imagination, great, that's immediately what I thought of. So that is a chronological resume. This is the most common type of resume. It's really great once you have some years of experience under your belt and you actually have jobs that you can talk about. For some of you though, maybe you've never worked in like a true real job. So that's totally okay too. That's what a functional resume is for. So a functional resume is totally based off of skills. So for example, let's do some sharing. Nora, what do you think is one of your best skills?
Let's say communication.
Communication, excellent choice. Everyone say hi to Nora. Thanks. So communication is a great skill set, right? So some of you communicate in your job as a peer mentor, some of you are student workers, some of you are tutors. All of those things require communication, yes? Yes, okay, so communication would be a great header to then put some bullets under talking about how you utilize the skill communication, right? Dua, what is a skill that you have?
Academic writing.
Academic writing, okay. So let's go with maybe, let me think, writing? Let me say that's okay. So let's say that maybe our next header would be writing skills. So there's different types of writing, right? So maybe you're really great at writing research papers, maybe you're really good at writing grants, maybe you're really great at writing social media posts. Those are all different types of writing, different types of skills. So you can talk about those under your writing section of your header. So again, notice that I haven't mentioned like, oh, I have a job at In-N-Out, or oh, I have a job at Planet Fitness, right? These are all skill sets. So that's kind of how a functional resume works. It's more based on the skills you have. How you talk about that is very, very vast. You can use the things you're learning in class. Many of you are in clubs and organizations. You can use those to talk about skills. So it's really great for people that maybe don't have traditional work experience, which a lot of you won't, and that's totally okay. You're just not there yet. I don't encourage you to like throw yourself into adulthood until you really, really, really have to. Let me just tell you, it's way better not being an adult for as long as physically possible. As long as possible. Not that you're not adults, you're all functioning adults, you're all amazing. So that's a functional resume. So a combination resume, does anyone want to take a guess? Yes, Angelina, you got it. It's literally combining the two. So let's say maybe you've had a couple jobs, like maybe you have a job at In-N-Out, maybe your job before that was at Planet Fitness, like, you know, like jobs for sure, you've gained tangible skills, but you're like, how is that relatable to me wanting to go to law school? You know, honestly, it's probably not. It's probably not all that relatable, but it is still important to say that you've done it, right? So what you could do is use a combination resume that will still say a job section. I worked at In-N-Out, I worked at Planet Fitness, but then under that, we'll have these skill set areas where you talk about your communication skills, your writing skills, something that maybe is a little bit more applicable to law school, right? So the point of this being is, as Kass and I kind of like get into the next steps, this is really important to think about what type of resume you're going to want to use for you. So all of you got these really cool booklets when you walked in. Can I borrow yours? Those of you that are joining online, you'll get this in digital format. Looks like this. Okay. So in here, you'll actually find different types of resumes. So you can actually see real examples. You don't have to be that creative and try to make this up. This will all be sent out via email. As well, so you can actually use these as templates. Like you don't have to recreate anything. You can just kind of use the template, fill everything in, right? Something that Kass and I hear a lot is that folks are like, oh, I just got a Microsoft like template, or I used a Google template. So I think both of us would argue those are not very great. They're actually usually really outdated. They're not updated very often. And for the worst, probably the worst part about it is they're really, really hard to edit. And for the most part, like all of your information is going to be different because you've had different types of experiences. So actually using some of the templates that we've made that are geared towards people that are in your season of life, right? People that are students, people that are maybe getting their first few jobs under their belt or doing internships, that's going to serve you far better than some random Microsoft template, I promise. So, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna hold this. So this is for those that have tuned in via Zoom. So I'm gonna hold this, but it doesn't work for y'all. Okay, so I pulled up the slides on my phone, so that's why I'm looking. I'm not being rude. But I'm gonna talk to you a little bit about the basics of resumes in terms of like, what are the important things you need to know to basically make sure that your resume works. That's what I do in my job, is I make sure that people's resumes work, right? If you're going for a job at Google, so is 300 other people. So we want to make sure that your resume works. So I'm going to talk to you about how to make an effective resume. So the first thing is you want a one-page resume for 99.9% of jobs. You know, this includes entry-level jobs all the way up to executive-level jobs. I'm learning in my role right now that even people going for the director of marketing at Google have a one-page resume, because it is a skill to condense all of your experience down to one page. When I worked here at UNLV in Career Services, I found that a lot of students here were like, I have a 4-page resume because I have so much stuff. That may be true, but it's going to be a skill set for you to condense that down to one page. So that's one thing to definitely think about. You want a one-page resume. Second to that is, especially for college students, it's very important to tailor the experience you have on your resume to what you're applying for, right? So let's say you're applying for a leadership job, right? Something, maybe a supervisor at Starbucks even. You're applying for some sort of a leadership position. If you have past leadership experience in your repertoire of activities, that's going to go on the top of your resume, right? That's the first thing you want employers to see. Second to that is, if you have any relevant or related experience to the roles you're applying to, you want to, again, make sure that's front and center. For most college students, what front and center is going to be is your education, right? So you'll want your education at the top, especially for roles where a bachelor's degree is required. So think about that kind of thing in terms of tailoring the organization of your resume. Most important at the top, because honestly, employers don't always get down to the bottom. Another thing that I see very commonly is people are putting paragraphs of information on their resume, right? You just have this big paragraph to describe what you did. That's great, but what we're going to do is condense that down into bullet points. So when you're describing your experiences, make sure you're using bullet points and you're not using first person language. So always do bullet points starting with a strong verb, and you'll see that as examples in your workbooks. Okay, so this one's my favorite. So I added these to the slides. Are they going to get the slides? Okay, so you all are going to get the slides. There are 2 free tools online that help you figure out what keywords need to be on your resumes. So keywords, right? These are industry buzzwords. These are things that are required out of the roles you're targeting. So let's say, for example, you want to go be a marketing specialist after college, right? There are marketing keywords that you need to be a professional in that field. Same with a legal assistant, same with, what's another job? A law clerk. All of these things are going to have specific skill sets or keywords that are required. So there are 2 tools that you can use to figure out what are those keywords. One of them is known as Jobalytics. So it's just jobalytics.co. You download that as a Google Chrome extension, and you can upload your resume and scan it next to a job, right? Basically say, do I have the skill sets required for this job? And what that extension does is it tells you what's missing. What is missing on your resume that's required for those roles? So you want to focus on those key words when you're building your bullet points out that are related to the jobs you want. And often a lot of those skills are like communication skills, stakeholders, clients, things like that. And that's a lot of the things that you do in some of your even day-to-day jobs. What else we got going on? Some final basics. I'm going to look at the slides here. Yes. So Jenna already talked about this whole idea of chronological order. You want everything to be the most recent all the way down to least recent. So every time you start a new section on your resume, make sure it's the most recent, typically your current experience, all the way back in time as you move down the page. The last thing is you want it to be reader friendly, right? So there are two systems that are scanning your resume. The first is the computer system, right? I talked about those keywords. That's what's going to get you in the door. But then a human being is actually going to read your resume. So you want to make sure that's readable, right? It's easy to read. It has a nice flow. It's aesthetically pleasing. And you want to make sure that it's free of errors. So those are some things that will really make your resume A, stand out, but B, actually work and be successful. And that's literally all I do in my job is make sure that resumes work.
All right. So one of us is like really going to trip over this, and that's going to be dramatic. And I'm hoping it's not me because I'm in a dress. So not that I'm hoping you trip. That would be horrible. No, I'm okay. All right. So now that we have an idea of like, what does your resume kind of look like? What is the flow? What is the structure? The next step is like actually tailoring it to you, right? So Kass and I often hear from a lot of folks that we coach is that, you know, they don't feel like their resume is like, it's not genuine enough to them. They're like, I think it needs color. I think it needs pictures. I think it needs like the most funny font in the whole wide world. Okay. So the best way to stand out and be unique on your resume is truly the words you use. So how are you describing your experience? Some of you that are English majors have like heard the phrase words matter, like words carry weight, right? They mean different things based on who's saying them, how they say them. 100% true on a resume, absolutely. So one of the things that you can use this the most is on your headers. So if you're looking at that resume example in your booklet, you'll see, right, there's a header that says education. There's a header that says leadership. There's a header that says professional experience, right? So those are all different headers. Not all of you should have the same headers. I'll give you a few caveats. So are all of you in school? If you're here and you're not, I have no idea how you got here. I don't know how you know about this, but like, welcome. We hope you enjoy it. But so all of you should have an education header, right? To Kass's point, most of the jobs you're going to be applying for are going to either require that you're in school, aka internships, or that you're getting a degree or that you have a degree, right? And also like, why would you spend 4 years on something that you're not going to show off a little bit? Just an idea. 4++. Please spend 4 years. Don't stay here forever. We love you, but eventually we want you to go off and be great. Not that you're great here. So what is the next step, right? So your education, like Kass mentioned, usually at the top, usually one of the top things. Next to that might be, let's say, your professional experience. So Dua, great example. So she did a really competitive internship program this summer with a law firm. Plugs to the COLA internship program. It's amazing. But so she did this really competitive internship experience, right? So that could go under internship experience, or it could be under professional experience because she wants to go to law school. So an internship at a law firm directly affiliated to going to law school. Yes, that makes sense. Oh, good. Okay, people are awake. This is great news. Great news. You never know these days with the masks. It's very hard to tell. Some of you just look like you hate my guts right now. So hopefully I'm like kind of entertaining. Thank you. Appreciate you. So I'll pay you later. So, but yeah, so this is so important, right? Is like actually catering to you. So some of you are not going to have professional experience, transparently. Like you've never done a professional internship. You've been working at Planet Fitness, in and out, amazing jobs, great gaining experience, paying bills. I appreciate that. I bartended my way through college. So like I understand the hustle, but that's not really professional experience, right? Like I would maybe say that's job experience, work experience, and those are good headers that you can use too, right? And they actually display something different, right? So work experience is like, I hustled, I made money, right? Professional experience is this is tied to the career that I want to do. Some of you are veterans, you've served our country. Thank you for doing that. That could go under military experience. That's like a whole different section, right? I don't think all of you should have military experience on your resume, just as like a side note, because not all of you have served, right? Please don't lie. Another example might be volunteer service, right? So some of you are doing amazing volunteer service throughout the community, some of with your organizations, great things to put on your resumes. People love, love, love seeing that you like are actually able to manage multiple plates. Like I promise you, employers want to know that you can do more than go to school and get good grades. We want to see that you can balance a lot of different moving pieces. But volunteer service, if you're not volunteering anywhere, I don't really know what you would put under volunteer service, right? So choose your headers wisely, choose something that is actually relevant to what you are doing and what you've done. So are we making sense? Lots of heads. I love this. Oh, of course it is. Okay, references. So this is, I would say, one of my favorites. So, okay, do any of you feel like you know someone professionally, not personally, professionally, that can actually speak about how great you are? Oh, I'm dying for the rest of you right now. So all of your hands should be up. All of you are in school. All of you have professors, you have faculty, you have people that care about you, you have advisors. How many of you have a job right now? Like any sort of job, part-time job, crummy job, job you hate? Awesome. Yeah. Okay. So whoever you work for ideally can speak to how you work. If they hate you, don't use them as a reference. That's not a good idea. Just as a side note there. But references are a really good thing to start early and really build relationships. So I love sharing this story because I really, really don't want students to do this. I had someone call me. So it was a couple of years ago. It was pre-pandemic, you know, back when we didn't have to wear masks all the time. Wasn't that a beautiful time? But no? Okay. All right. I'm fiending for that. So when it's safe, obviously. So anyway, this guy calls me and he's like, hey, you know, you supervised XYZ. They're applying for this job. I think they're really great. And I'm like, XYZ. I'm like, yeah, maybe they are great. Totally. And they're like, oh, did this person not work for you? And I was like, honestly, I work at a large university and I've supervised hundreds, if not thousands of people over the years at this point. They probably did, but I don't actually remember them. So fun fact, when your employers don't remember you, that's not a good thing. But it's always nice to like let people know before you're using them as a reference, because once they like told me a little bit more about the person, I was like, that guy, yeah, he was pretty good. He was pretty good. I still couldn't say that much greatness about him because it had been like 3 years, but he was actually a decent worker. Funnier part of the story, the next day the guy calls me and he's like, hey, I'm going to use you as a reference. Is that okay? And I was like, you're going to, or you already did? And he was like, oh, well, I mean, like I submitted the application just like a week ago. And I was like, it's too late, man. I'm sorry. I already blew this for you. It's my bad, but not really. It's really your bad. So moral of that cute little story, like talk to the people you're using as reference, make sure they're professional in nature. I'm not going to lie. When I read resumes and I see people that their references are like their mom's aunt's best friend, I'm like, just because you babysat their children when they were 5 does not mean they're a professional reference. Unless nannying is like your gig. If that's your gig, then that'll work. But really trying to think about your references strategically in the way that who you put, do they actually know you? Can they speak highly of you? And did you tell them? Because the last thing you want is my story about XYZ. Also, you just never want to be the example in front of a large group of people. It's usually nothing positive. So I really encourage you to think about your references. I encourage you to like make relationships with your academic advisors, your faculty, people teaching your classes. Those are all really, really strong, great recommendation letters and references. And most importantly, when you have great alumni and people coming in from the community to do anything, talk to them, meet them. Don't shake their hand right now because we're not allowed to do that. But give them like an elbow or an air high five, right? Meet these people because this could be a future networking opportunity for you, right? So actually, as Dua mentioned at the very beginning, like professionalism is a lot about getting outside of your comfort zone, actually taking that first step, which is usually not fun, but always necessary. You go.
Right. So so the reason we brought up references is because they're really essential to the job search process, but they do not belong on your resume. So if you have references available upon request on the bottom of your resume, take that off. If you have references listed on your resume, take that off. References will be asked of you when the employer is ready, right? And typically speaking, that's towards the end of the application cycle. So like you did your final interview and they're like, oh, we really want to talk about your references. Can you send us a list, right? So have those on hand, have a couple people in mind, have their email, their phone number, that kind of thing, where they work, what their title is. Have that on hand, but don't include it on your resume or the related materials to that unless they specifically ask you. So that was kind of the piece there. Now, before we transition to LinkedIn, which is one of my favorite topics, we're going to just talk about some final tips and tricks for resume writing, submitting your resume, that kind of thing. So pulling up the slides to remember where I'm at. Okay, so the first thing is proofread everything. right? One of the biggest mistakes for submitting literally anything is having errors on it, right? Spelling errors, it's bad for essays, it's bad for your resume, it's bad for your cover letter. All those things you want to make sure that you're proofreading. Another thing that's really helpful is proofreading to make sure that it's easy to read. It's easy to understand. I get who you are as a professional by reading through it in a couple of seconds. So have your friends, have your family, have your coworkers read through your resume, make sure it's good to go before you submit it for anything important. Send everything electronically as a PDF file. So many of you are building your resume in Google Docs, a Word doc, something like that. Once you're done and you're ready to submit it as a PDF file, because then it doesn't ever change form, doesn't change structure, the formatting's not all weird, and it's exactly the same as you want it to look when you submit it for something. So make sure to save it and send it as a PDF. Avoid exaggerating. So Jenna talked a little bit ago about making sure that you're not saying things that you didn't do. So when I worked in career services here, I would literally have students come up to me and say, hey, like, I know you're reviewing my resume right now, but we're going to have to take a few of those things off. And I was like, well, why? And they were like, I didn't really do that, or I didn't work there for that long. Let's talk about what you've done, especially with your career services center and the people who are helping you build your resume. Think about the things you've done, and you definitely can talk those things up. So avoid exaggerating. And keep everything up to date. It's super hard to go back in time and think about some of the things you did, the dates that you worked there. So as you go through your college experience, just keep everything up to date. You know, when you've done something, you volunteered somewhere, you picked up a side job, those kinds of things, add that to your resume. Have it cataloged on one master resume. So like, right, a really big, long document. So you have all that information in one place, and then you can pick and choose what you include for certain applications, right? You might include certain things for one application for like an academic role versus other things that you might include for your professional role. So just like keep all that in one place, and then you can refer back to it later rather than having to think back in the past. So those are some final tips and tricks. I think now's a really good time to say, like, do you all have questions about resumes and things related to the resume before we transition to LinkedIn? Yes, so we'll start there. Yeah, so the question for those that are online is how many references should you include or have on hand? So I always say 3 to 5 is a really good rule of thumb. Most positions do ask for about 3 references. Sometimes depending on the company and depending on the role, they might ask for 5. So 5 at most, 3 at minimum, but make sure you have at least 3. Yeah, and then you had a question? Yeah, so how necessary is a cover letter? I'm still answering that question in my role. The answer is it depends, right? So there's like 3 kind of indications as to whether a cover letter is necessary. So the first is if there is no mention of a cover letter anywhere in the application process, don't send one because they do not want to spend the time reading it. Second, they may say cover letter optional. Now, what I would say there is for like academic roles, internships, or roles that you need to kind of explain why you're applying or explain the importance of you as an applicant, attach a cover letter. In other cases, like Google positions or really like high-end corporate jobs, I probably wouldn't attach a cover letter. The people I work with, we don't waste time on the cover letter because typically it's not read. So if it's optional, weigh your options. If it's for an internship, yes, please attach a cover letter because they care, right? You're going to be growing and learning and developing in like a fellowship, attach a cover letter if it's optional, that kind of thing. But for large corporate jobs, personally, I wouldn't waste my time, but it's up to you. And then the third is if it says cover letter required, follow the instructions, attach a cover letter. And I think there are some examples of cover letters in your book. So refer to those, look up online, like strong cover letters for insert position name. There's a lot of really awesome examples, especially as far as like what you can say in your cover letter. I highly suggest utilizing your resources. Other questions? All right, we'll go here and then here. So you first.
Sometime in college, do we have to put anything we did in high school on our resume?
Great question. So when I worked here, I got that question a lot. So the question was, if you are in college now, do you include things from high school? So you can include jobs that you had while you were in high school, right? If you worked at Subway, you worked at Starbucks, like if you had a formal job, a lifeguard, you can include that, right? Like work experience. Second to that, if you did like an internship and you're within your first like 2 years of college, you can still include it. After that, take everything off from high school, unless you like absolutely have to, or it's super, super related. So typically you want to shy away from anything from high school after your freshman year, sometimes your sophomore year, depending on how much you've done so far in college. But yeah, try to kind of take that off unless it was like a professional role or something very, very related to what you're going into. Yeah. You?
Yeah, so a couple options. So career services, actually, they can do one-on-one coaching. They also have a similar like workshop about resumes, or through the College of Liberal Arts, we have a graduate assistant who will do one-on-one coaching or group sessions. So if you want like individual help with kind of like your resume, we offer that in the college. Link Bella, wave your hand.
Just like, cool.
That is the person. That is the person. Yeah, she's managing this Zoom. So, but if you want to help with your resume like individually, definitely that. Also, side note, if you're in my COLA 402 class or my COLA 100, you get me to review your resume. So you're welcome in advance. Also, I'm sorry. Oh, and our associate dean also has a background in technical writing and is an English professor, and it's truly amazing. So you have lots of good resources. So if you're in her COLA 402 online class, you also get that. So pretty much you get the best of the best, no matter who is looking at your resume. You're welcome.
For starting out though, I would just suggest if you're just starting out and you really want to build your resume from scratch, take a look at the examples in the book and just echo what's on there and then plug in your information. Then once you have like a solid foundation, bring it to somebody who can review it, because it's like the worst thing in the world to use a template and then find out that you didn't need to use the template, and you can just literally follow the flow in those books. So I definitely suggest that for starting out. Other questions? Yeah, you. Oh boy. Yeah, it's actually really not an ambiguous question. So the question was like, how far back can you go on your resume? Best practice is 10 to 15 years. Anything long, like older than 15 years, you really don't want to reference. 10 is like typically the cap, but right, like I work with people today who are going for executive roles, and they go back about 15 years. So general rule of thumb, don't go farther back than 10 to 15 years. And then also high school, just, ignore it based on previous response. Yes. Any other questions?
What's the difference between when you use a CV that's more than one page and an example of you resume? I know I'm definitely.
Yeah, fantastic question. Do you want to take that? You want to take it? Cool. So the question is, when do you use a CV versus when do you use a resume? So pretty much you're going to use a resume for everything except for academic roles, right? So for an internship, you want to use a resume. For a job application, you want to use a resume. For things that are academic related, scholarship applications, any graduate assistantships, if you decide to go on to graduate school, research assistantships here at the undergraduate level, and then like graduate school. So those are typically the purposes you'll use a CV. Any other time, it's a resume, right? Maybe you use a 2-page resume in some cases when they say like super long, like really want to know your past, but 9 times out of 10, resume, unless those other examples I gave. So academic purposes, only CV. Make sense? Cool. Anything else? Yeah, you? Yeah, so what I would suggest, so this is about like going farther back, if you did an internship when you were younger, those kinds of things. So if it's like directly related to the work that you're trying to go into, like if you did an internship where you worked with kids and you want to work with kids, maybe you can include it. But what I would suggest in that case is refer to your advisors, right? So refer to the College of Liberal Arts, refer to Career Services, see what they suggest. It's like a, case by case scenario. So try not to go further back than 15 years. There are exceptions to the rule for sure. Cool. Anything else?
What like color and font should we use?
Yeah, great question. So 9 times out of 10, black and white, right? Just stick with black text. You can use very dark colors. So like a dark blue, a dark green. I'm finding that in my professional role now, that's okay. But going beyond anything that's very dark in tone is a bad idea, and only use that for like headers, your name, things that like would stand out, but the text alone should be black.
I would also say like know your industry a little bit. So we're going to talk about this a little bit with LinkedIn, but actually actually looking at examples of what other people in your industry are doing, like not also entry level people, but you know, maybe someone's at a manager role or like a publisher that you're looking at. What do they do? Right? So I mean, like a good example, right, is like some folks that work in magazine publishing. Depending on what type of magazine you work for, you might want to be a little bit more colorful, a little bit more vivacious, but still I would echo what Kass said, like really rein it down. Like what you think, probably 5 steps lower. Yeah, like if you're thinking hot pink, go to dark purple.
Right.
Very dark purple.
Right. Like I always say to anybody that I'm working with, we call them fellows at my job, but anybody I'm working with on their resume is like, what's going to make you stand out is not the color on your resume, right? It's the information, the experience, and the skills. So make sure that pops rather than, you know, red, blue, a color. Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
So we're going to move to LinkedIn.
Sweet.
Kass's favorite topic.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to kick us off. So how many of you in this room have a LinkedIn profile? I'm loving this. This is perfect. So a lot of you in this room have a LinkedIn or might have a LinkedIn. You think you might have one. I would say you want to start using it now, right? So your LinkedIn is your professional presence online. So many of you probably have a Twitter, an Instagram, a Facebook, those kinds of things. That's social media too, but that's your personal social media. And when somebody looks you up because you applied for a job, you want one of the first things that they see is your LinkedIn profile rather than any of those other things, right? Because employers are going to look you up on social media. They're going to try to find things out about you. So clean those things up. But you really want to have a professional presence to really establish a really professional brand for yourself. LinkedIn is probably the biggest, most important way that people find their next job, whether it's an internship or it's your first full-time job or even an executive level job 10 years from now. LinkedIn is literally the top online site for both job searching and professional networking, right? So if you don't have a LinkedIn profile or a LinkedIn account, build one now. You want to make sure you have one, and you can just use the basic LinkedIn profile, right? You don't have to buy the premium for the most part. Like pretty much none of you in this room should need a premium profile. But LinkedIn is a great place to start to establish your professional brand, look for jobs, have your resume living online, and have a really great spot for employers to Google search you. You want that to be the first thing they see. You also can include a link to your LinkedIn profile at the very top of your resume. So you type in, you know, all your contact info, your phone number, your email, and then LinkedIn, there's your URL. So they can go right there instead of Google searching you and maybe finding things that they don't want to find. So clean up your other social medias and have a really strong LinkedIn. Is it you yet? Cool. Jenna's going to take over because I've talked a lot.
So I get the really fun topics of photos. So how many of you like love a good Insta photo? Yes, there's always a few of us. Absolutely. I love a good Insta photo. That is not what we're talking about right now. So your professional headshot on LinkedIn should not be the image you're thinking of right now as your like go-to Insta photo. That is not the same thing under like any stretch of the imagination. So what I really suggest is the university often does like free headshots throughout the years. So like take advantage of that. When you hear of like the intersection doing free headshots, or maybe an organization is doing free headshots, or CSUN, like do that 100%, because just being transparent with you, headshots are very expensive. Like they somewhere range between like $100 to $250 plus. So you're all students, you're broke as a joke. You can't afford that. Let's just be real. So unless you have a really good friend that is an epic photographer or just has an iPhone 12, then honestly, throw on a cute little polo. Like these guys right here, they look great. Throw on a good polo, stand between a cool tree, not this is weird. And then take a cute photo, right? Nice smile, nothing too obtrusive, wonderful, you're good. So things to be aware of when you're taking your professional headshot, whether you are male or female, I do not care. Like no cleavage at all, period. Make yourself look like you're put together. If you aren't like a hair and makeup kind of girl or guy, that's totally fine. Don't do hair and makeup, but like look put together, like you actually showered is a good look. Good look. Like I promise you, like Kass 99.9% of the time does not wear makeup and looks amazing like that. And so, and a lot of their headshots, no makeup, totally good, all good, right? Me, I like dress like this 99.9% of the time. Like I usually always have my hair up in a top little tight knit bun thingamadoo, right? So that's professional to me. So figure out what's professional to you. Then like I encourage you to take it up just like one notch, right? So whatever that means to you, it's going to be different for all of you. But I really encourage like no probably full body exposure unless you're just like really vibing and you have like a really cool professional look on, right? Like if you have a full professional outfit, whether that's like suit, tie, or this is not professional, something more professional than this, that's awesome. If it's like you throwing on a polo, like here up is great. That's amazing. Or if you have like body image challenges, which I do like 99% of the time, which people never believe me, but I really do, like make yourself look good, whatever that means, right? Like if you feel better not showing like this half of your body, don't show that half of the body. Amazing, right? So just try to make yourself look good, look professional, look put together. Don't look like a skis ball on either sides, please. I know that people are always trying to be like, you know, don't judge a book by the cover. I really wish I could tell you that's real life, but most times it's not. So do your best to like look your best, whatever that is, not like whoever's sitting next to you, but whatever your best is. And also just look at other people's, right? That's always a good place to start. If you're applying for jobs and stuff and you're like, I really want to work at the Natural History Museum, right? Okay, look at their lead curator and look at their profile. Look what their photo looks like. Go for that, something similar to that with your style, your spin on it, right? So it's not as complicated as people make it seem. And especially with technology nowadays, you don't have to pay like $1 zillion for headshots. Just have a really good friend who takes decent photos. For a long time, she was my really good friend that took decent photos. So, and then eventually you can afford them.
Yes. So, the profile photo is important because that's a part of your brand, right? So my headshot is just in front of some like nice trees and it's in portrait mode and my friend took it and she was really nice. Great. Cool. So make sure that you just look decent. That's great. But then how else do you establish a brand on your LinkedIn? Well, the two most important and primary features of your brand on LinkedIn is your headline. So that's the thing listed right below your profile photo. That headline is very important because what it's going to do is it's going to establish your identity. So my headline says I'm a career mentor helping people find their next, dream job. That's literally my brand. Like that's what I do. I help people in my own life help figure out what they want to do when they grow up and then help them identify and execute that job. And then I also do that at work as my job. So that's what my headline says, right? But yours may not say that. So some examples for headlines for you all is aspiring what? Aspiring doctor, aspiring lawyer, aspiring legal assistant, aspiring marketing specialist. The list goes on, right? So for many of you, it might start with aspiring something, right? Because you're in college, you're working towards whatever that aspiration is. Other things that you might include are like your current job. So maybe you're a graduate assistant, maybe you're a research assistant, maybe you are doing something that's related to the thing you want to do, an intern at the Discovery Children's Museum, something like that. That could be in your headline. Maybe you have things that you're really passionate about. So maybe you want to go into advocacy of some sort, right? Maybe you're really passionate about LGBTQ rights. Maybe you're really passionate about going into the world of social work, something like that. That can be in your headline too. You have a little bit of room to kind of play around with what is your professional brand and identity. It shouldn't just say student at UNLV. It can say student at UNLV. I would suggest getting a little more specific, like philosophy student at UNLV or whatever your major is. But then also have things that you want to do, things you want to be, and things that you are to establish that brand. So aspiring blank, whatever you kind of want to have in there. The second thing that's really important about your brand on LinkedIn is that profile summary. So it's the about section. A lot of people will say, well, I don't want it to be too long. People aren't going to read it. People are actually going to read it. So if you look me up on LinkedIn, Kass Moore, you can look me up, please, connect with me. I'm happy to connect with all of you. But if you look me up, my about section is actually quite long. So things that you might include in your about section. What are you doing right now? Do you have an internship? Are you working part-time? Are you a research assistant? Are you doing projects in school? Do you have specific skills that you're working on? Are you taking some sort of an online class to develop your skills in some sort of area, right? What are you doing right now? Then what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? What do you see for your future? What do you want to do next? Are you going to graduate school? Are you looking for a job at a specific company in a specific field? Talk about those kinds of things. And then even play around a little bit personally with what do you like to do outside of work or outside of school, right? I have that on my profile. Like, what do I like to do outside of school? And then I answer that question, or work and I answer that question. So it can be kind of long, like 3 to 5 paragraphs about who you are, what you're doing, and where you want to go, because that again establishes your identity. You can also have like maybe a key skills section. So if you're really skilled in certain areas, so for example, I work with marketing professionals, and so they're skilled in like Adobe, they're skilled in Google Analytics, those kinds of things. If you have technical skills, you can list that in your about section as well. Maybe you want to research, so you have specific research skills, like you really know how to utilize different softwares and databases, those kinds of things. So you can include that as well as like technology skills, those kinds of things can be in your about section. And you know, the best thing to do, as Jenna mentioned, is look up people that you want to be, right? If you want to work at Google and you want to do something at Google, look up people who are doing that job at Google. If you want to go on and you know, be a lawyer, look up a couple lawyers in town and what their LinkedIn profiles look like, those kinds of things. So then you can start to kind of echo and emulate their behavior. And then you know, what does a brand in my field look like? And if you're struggling to figure that out, work with people who work at UNLV in the College of Liberal Arts or the Career Services Office to figure out how to establish your brand. So that's what I would suggest. And then, is it my turn? Still me. Cool. So the next feature of LinkedIn is, improving and updating your profile. So always keep it up to date, right? Make sure that if you've added another job, you've done a volunteer experience, you've held an internship, add that to your profile, keep it up to date. You're in a part-time job, add that to your profile. Keep everything up to date so you don't have to go back in time. And then also include industry buzzwords. So there's a skills section in LinkedIn. And what that skills section is going to do for you is 2 things. Again, continue to add to your brand. But second, as you get closer to graduating, it's actually going to help you populate in recruiters' searches. So the skills that you have listed on your LinkedIn are going to help you get headhunted through LinkedIn, essentially. So maybe you've updated your LinkedIn profile recently and you added a bunch of skills, and then you started getting messages from recruiters like, hey, we have this opening at Barton Associates. I see you're about to graduate from UNLV. Do you want to apply? The more skills you add, the more often that's going to happen. So that's actually good because it makes the job search process not just one-sided, but now 2-sided, because people are able to look you up based on the skills and criteria that you have on your profile. So keep it up to date. If you haven't started using your LinkedIn actively, I would encourage you to do that now, because then by the time you graduate and by the time you're ready for that next step, it's already up to date and you don't have to like do a million things before graduating in addition to just trying to graduate. So focus on that. And then recommendations and endorsements. So again, this is your professional brand. This is your professional platform for networking. So if you've worked for somebody, you can go on LinkedIn and ask for a recommendation. You can also give a recommendation. That feature of LinkedIn basically tells a future employer that people like to work with you and you like to work with people. So they really don't have to worry about, are you a good coworker? Are you a good colleague? Are you a good employee? Because you have those recommendations on your profile to show like, I'm likable. You might like me too. Hire me, that kind of thing. So you can have recommendations. You can have people endorse your skills, and just start to get active on LinkedIn so it becomes way easier by the time you graduate.
All right, so we are going to wrap it up. There's a million other things we could tell you about LinkedIn, but since we're running out of time, what we're going to do is Dua is going to tell you a little bit about our next workshop. So if you want to learn more about professionalism, like what's the next step, and then a couple options for you. As you head out, there are cookies in the back, crumble cookies, bomb cookies. Please use the tongs because COVID. So use the tongs, be courteous. There's also water, coffee, take whatever you would like. And if you are here for class or for an RSO, you're going to get a survey late tomorrow morning, most likely. And you need to fill that order out in order to get credit for any of those things. So before you all head out, I'm going to toss it over to you. And then Kass and I will be in the front. So if you want to ask us questions, if you have specific questions about anything, please come up and chat with us.
Alrighty, thank you, Jenna. So did you learn something new? What was it? Yes? Love give me jazz hands. Okay. So thank you so much, Kass, for being here. I will definitely be stalking you on LinkedIn. Thank you, Jenna, Malika, Bella, for hosting the Zoom, and rest of the team, give me jazz hands so we can clap for you. Thank you so much for making this happen. So, first of 5 workshop series, this is the first. So what comes after resume? What do you guys think? Yes, my favorite subject. So next up on September 28th, 3:30, is it the same location, Jenna? Yeah, same location here. Somewhere we will keep you updated on that.
That's
We
it in
will-
your book.
Yeah, so we will be talking about interviewing. So yeah, stay tuned for that. And if you attend 4 out of 5, you will get a career leader certificate. So thank you so much for being here.
You may or may not see Dua make a total fool of herself at that particular workshop. It's titled Laughing for Interviewing for a Reason. It's going to be amazing. So if you want a good laugh, we also have one of the top attorneys in town coming to present. So I highly suggest if you're considering law school at any point, you go there, like come and meet her and talk to her. I would just suggest that a little bit. It's gonna be amazing. It's gonna be amazing. And I just realized that because we didn't bring this up, I feel like this is important to say. So some of you may or may not know that someone in this room got a scholarship for coming today. So amazing work to all of you who asked questions. I don't know your name, but purple hair, you got the scholarship. I'm serious, yeah. And Malika Bella, you get to pick our online winner. So Malika Bella will be in contact for our online winner. You get money too. So come to the workshops, bring your friends, take cookies on the way out. We hope that you had fun, and we'll be up here if you have any questions. Goodbye.